So today we are going to talk about the transaction set 820, and again I was able to Google and came across this document as a companion guide of transaction set 820, again which is from the 4010 implementation side, not from the 5010 point of view, because 5010 whatever documents we have, again we can expect some minor modifications on that, but again due to the license limitations 5010 I cannot distribute it. Now as we see, what do we have here? It says Falun Community Health Plan Companion Guide. So as we discussed during one of our class, to say companion guide is very much customized form of our implementation guide, where you can find state specific requirement or you can find something related to the particular payer itself, and they have customized it for their own needs. So this is, again as I said, this is for the Falun Health. And in this documentation, again you have the trading partner setup. So the key over here is whichever transaction set we are looking at, and that transaction is the EDI transaction set, the trading partner setup is the key. The trading partner setup is nothing but how and what kind of a contract level you have set between both the parties, the receiver side as well as the sender side, so that they can have a unique key assigned to the sender, so that when the receiver is receiving it, the receiver have set up the system in such a way so that it can identify that unique submitter. And that all is done with the help of a software. There are plenty of softwares available in the market. Now let's move on and see some of the things which we will talk about it. Now see, the primary key area, what it says, that the 820 implementation guide for payroll deducted and other group premium payment for insurance product has been established. So now this gives us a very clear understanding of where exactly our 820 transaction is getting used. We have discussed about that as well, that this is the response of your 811 transaction set, where 811 is the billing, invoice is billed, whereas 820 is the premium payment. So as we see, this is talking more on the payroll deduction, and most of the time you're going to see 820 on the payroll deductions, because when do we generate the 820? When we are having invoice billed to the large organizations, where they are going to take the premium from individual employees, and then that will be paid to the insurance company. So that is exactly where we are going to talk about it.
Can you repeat that again, Sushmita? I didn't understand. What is payroll deducted and mean actually?
Payroll deduction happens when, what happens when someone is taking the insurance through their employer.
Okay.
Then only they go ahead and do the payroll deduction. That means on your paycheck you are going to see that you have paid this amount towards your insurance. So that is getting deducted directly from your paycheck.
True. Oh.
In terms of the commercial world, the premium payment happens through your debit card or credit card. You set it up, the recurring payment, and that's where it happens. But the payroll deductor only happens when you have a employer-sponsored program.
Absolutely. So the premium is automatically paid every paycheck from the payroll itself, the salary itself.
Yes. Yes. And that's where the 820 gets used. That's where the 820 transaction set comes into the picture.
Okay. So it's more used by the employers and employees, because that is what the group payment plan is also provided by the employers only, right?
Not employer and employee. It is employer and the payee. The payee is your insurance company, and the employer is the one who is doing the payroll deduction from the employees. So employee is not directly dealing with the data, but the employee is the end user.
Right. Got it. Because the paycheck itself is minus the premium payment only. So the employer will have to
Absolutely.
send all that money that he has taken from the employee from his paycheck to the insurance company. So that transaction that happens between the employer and the insurance companies is where the 820 comes into picture.
820 comes into the picture.
Okay, fine. Is this also used by shop customers like small business owners also?
When you say the small businesses, in terms of, are you talking the employer who have an employee strength of 20 or less, something in that sense?
Yeah, 50 or less, yeah.
See, that the 820 transaction doesn't limit the payroll deduction to be 5 employee or 2 employee. The small employer is also going to pay, the small employer is also going to get billed by the insurance company in the same way how the bigger organizations are getting billed. So again, see, some small organizations, what they do is they make the payment to the employee directly. So they make the payment, whatever is the employer contribution, they make the payment to the employee. And now employees goes out and buy their own insurance. So they are buying not an employer sponsor, they are buying the consumer, which is more kind of their own individual plan.
Okay.
Whereas if the small employer is offering the insurance and that insurance is offered in the same way how any large organizations are offered, then the transactions are going to be exactly same. There will be no difference.
Yeah.
Because HIPAA doesn't limit that, okay, if you are a small organization, then you should use this transaction. If not, you should not. There is no limitation on that. Okay, now moving on. Now there is acknowledgement also, for, which is 997. This is a very, I would say, narrow transaction because the financial people are only able to have access towards this. So as we see that when the 820 payment is done, there is a transaction set which is 999, which has to do with the payment acknowledgement, that okay, the payment is being received and they do the control and balancing, and based on that the 997 gets generated. Now
the difference between 999 and 997?
There is a difference between 999 and the 997, because 999 is more kind of a, 999 have nothing to do with the payment processing. That is more about how much data you submitted and how much data we have processed, more on the 834 side of it.
Oh, so
the 999 transaction.
The acknowledgement is 999. For 820, the acknowledgement is 997.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's how it works. Now, talking about the acknowledgement, as I discussed earlier, that acknowledgement is a very big factor in this electronic transaction. The reason being is that if you do not have the 999 acknowledgement, then what happens is you do not know what kind of a data is received and what kind of a data is actually being accepted against what data you have successfully passed on to the receiver side and what has been rejected. So that is what the 999 functionality is. So whenever we talk about it, it is moreover, you can think this is kind of a receipt of the batch transaction. And why it is batch transaction? Because all the files get submitted, and then based on that you come back and see that okay, number of files submitted and the number of files processed and number of files received. So that is what you are going to understand as part of the 999. See, 999, there are different, yeah, go on.
So it will be only one acknowledgement, or for every file one acknowledgement gets generated?
No. How it works? Each batch, I said, each batch.
That will
Okay,
continue
now.
to limit about how many files they can submit per batch.
Correct, correct. Now, not only that, see, the 999 acknowledgement is not very, it's not like that you are going to have 999 acknowledgement only for the claim. If you have, let's say, submitted the 270 file, which is the eligibility and the benefit, you will have the 999 acknowledgement for that also. But the only thing is, remember when we were discussing about the implementation guide, we were talking about the specific predefined values.
Right.
That predefined values are the ones going to decide that this acknowledgement is for which transaction. If it is HC, then it is going to be for 837. If it is HS, it is going to be for 270. If it is HI, it is going to be for 278. And if it is HR, it is going to be 276. Okay. So like that, those values are the one decides that this 999 transaction acknowledgement is for which transaction.
Okay.
Similarly, see, when we will look at the 837 file, we know that there are some qualifiers, some values which says like, okay, if it is 1, it will be the NPI. If it is 2, it is the tax ID. If it is 3, the social security number, like that. So that is how you determine that what kind of a value you are going to have will drive that, okay, what kind of a 999 acknowledgement is being received by looking at that value.
Okay.
Okay, we will have a review of 999 also, that how the 999 works, so that we understand exactly how the 999 data work and what kind of information gets sent whenever we are looking at the acknowledgement file.
Okay.
Now, coming back to the premium processing, since this is the financial transactions we are talking about, it is very much important to have all the data in place along with the information which we are sending, because this is all financial. We need to make sure that none of the employees' premium is missing. All the employees where the company have done the payroll deduction is getting reported properly and getting processed properly. So that is why it is very important. The acknowledgement for any transaction is very much important. Now, let's look at some of the fields, what kind of a fields you have. Now again, this is, we are talking about the data value I want to jump on to. Okay, so it's again same kind of a format. You can see it starts from the header and the file ends with the trailer, because when the system is reading, see, no one is manually sitting and translating these files. These files are picked up by the process, get processed, the data gets updated into the table, and the end user who is actually going to see this data in the system are going to open their application and they are going to see these values in a proper field. They are not going to read through the flat file and the raw data, how it was translated to the payer. They are not going to read through the data like that. They are going to read it through with the user-friendly software which have translated this data into their particular application screen. And when that screen will be opened by the person, that's when the person, the analyst or the customer service executive is going to see all this data which was submitted and processed. Okay. So it's very important that, yeah.
One question. Now, when we saw the implementation guide, we knew, say, the ISA statement was, say, 12 or 13 field delimited statement, correct? The segment, rather. I wouldn't say statement. It was a with 13 positions or whatever you could have. Now, what each field should have, what data each field should carry, can be different for different companies, and that is what is mentioned in the companion guide? Or it is, or is it that whatever, now they say for the ISA segment, the first field should have the ID of that particular trading partner. The second field should contain the time. The third field should contain the date. Is that what we have to follow, or that it just says, okay, the ISA segment is 13 fields long. It should have like 13 fields, the data fields. And then what goes into that data field depends on different companies, that they can set whatever data they want to put in. Is that what it means?
No, I'll help you understand. So let's imagine, we are just making assumption here because we don't have the right numbers here.
Right.
Let's say there are 500 fields in the implementation guide of 837. Out of 500 fields, 400 fields are required fields. We cannot do anything with those fields. We cannot play around with the required fields.
Oh.
Whereas the company, so let's say the required field have a value that, okay, the sender, the submitter physician should submit the field 1, which is the qualifier, and field 2, which is the value. Now this is both are required field. Now field 1 have 3 values such as NPI, tax ID, and the social security number. And depending upon what is the qualifier, these 3 are the qualifier in field 1. Your field 2 is going to have that value. So it means if the qualifier is 1, which is social security number, then the field 2 is going to have the social security number of the provider. If the qualifier is 2, which is the NPI, the field corresponding field is going to have the value of NPI. Now, this is the implementation guide. Whereas your companion guide can come back and say that, okay, I am expecting always the tax ID qualifier in this, which is number 3, and the tax ID value in the corresponding field.
Okay.
This is number 1. This type of requirements you may have in the companion guide, because see, they are not playing around with the required field. They are just enforcing what they need in that field.
Okay.
Number 2, the other things which are kind of an optional fields or the situational fields, they can have their own requirement to say that, okay, this is what I want. Out of these 100, out of 500, we said 400 are required. Okay, they created the requirement for 400. But for the remaining 100, they may come back and say, I require additional 50 fields as a required field when you are submitting the claim to me as an Aetna.
Okay.
That goes in your companion guide.
Got it.
So when the physician is submitting it, they need to make sure they submit as per their guideline, as per the companion guide.
True. So just to get a picture, now a physician may have an EDI interface set up with so many different insurers, right? So for every issuer, insurance plan issuer or the payee, they will have like different companion guides, and they have to follow like their respective this setup. Like they would have had the interface set up with different people, and then they are following different whatever their requirement is, right, with each this.
Yes. So what they do is, so when they sign the contract, they look at the contract as a overall, all the contracts, and then based on that they set up their system. So what happens, see, more is not harmful but less is harmful. So if let's say the Cigna does not require those 50 fields, but they are sending it because that's how they have set up the system, because Aetna requires it, so they are sending it to everyone. So Cigna is not going to use that data, that is the only difference, but still they are sending it.
Okay.
So they set up the data, exactly they do the same thing what any payer is doing, what any insurance company is doing it. Why? Because they are just looking at the overall picture, that what are the things they need from the state, what are the things they need to pick up from the implementation guide, and based on that they set up their system.
Okay.
Similarly, the provider world does the same thing. They look at their contract, they look at their companion guides for which they have got a contract into, and based on that they take as a overall summary and then set up their system.
Okay.
That is how the systems are functioning. Or if the system have the customizable feature, they go ahead extra step and then try to use it.
Okay. Okay. Got it.
Now coming back to the header and the details. Now, so as we discussed that since this is the EDI transaction as well, this also have the header. Then see here, financial information. How they are going to identify wherever. See, this is the companion guide we are looking at. So we are going to see very specific values. We are not going to see exactly how we looked upon the implementation guide. So as it says here, the transaction heading code, it can be I or C or D. Depending upon how they want to proceed. If it is remittance only, they will send I. If it is payment accompanies remittance, that means that the payment have the details of the with the reasons, they will have C. Make payment only, that would have D. That means just the payment, no reason, nothing. Then they have the monetary amount. Monetary amount is that total amount, how much they are going to be have as part of this financial transaction. The credit debit flag, payment method. Now see all this, like they are talking about, they are going to have the check payment, they are going to have the online payment, which is kind of electronic transfer, or they are going to have the wired transfer. That is what all it is. So all these values, if you will look at again the payment implementation guide, you are going to see the translation of all these values, and based on that translation, this particular company have come back and said, okay, this is how we need to have our system set up, and this is how we are going to work. That's why we see very specific values here, very specific. Then you have the financial information, reassociation keys, non-US dollar currency. This is more kind of a financial control analyst job to make sure all the data is coming through. I'm just trying to see if anything which is very specific we need to talk about.
The segment requirement OMC, what does that mean?
Where do you see that?
The header, the title.
Oh, okay. This one?
Yeah.
See, they usually the implementation guide have a very specific, but if they have translated, let's look at it.
It will be at the end for the key.
I'm just checking that is there glossary there. No, they don't. But for some reason I feel this document is not fully completed data. Let me just go through the values, maybe I'll be able to. So
M may be mandatory, whatever, because it says this is what they want.
M, O, C I understand. O is for optional, C is for the conditional. That's what I understand.
Yeah, then M will be mandatory.
M then makes it mandatory, yeah. So then moreover they have just converted the same thing in their own language and made it as, yeah. So now coming back to, I'm just looking through some qualifiers to see if,
like here you have the account number. If BPR 06 segment is an automatic credit transfer like ACH, whatever, then they need to have the bank details given.
yeah, because that is how they are expecting that their financials to work. And that is why they have, so they are not giving this condition here. You see the difference? This is what I was explaining. If it was the implementation guys, this would have given the values that, okay, you could have 1 for ACH, 2 for this, 3 for that, something like that.
Okay.
But here they are saying that, okay, this is it. This has to be satisfied.
Oh.
The BPR06 field has to have ACH, and then you need to provide the bank account detail in the corresponding field. Then over here, originating company identifier, they are saying 1 plus federal tax ID. This is not what you will find in the implementation guide.
Oh.
You're going to find different things. Then this is something how your implementation guide will say. But they may say that, okay, the trans type code must be 1, always 1. Something that reference.
Oh, so you have to have the implementation guide and put the companion guide over it and see what the original thing was and what the company actually requires.
Correct. See this field, reference identification qualifier. They just put it as 14, but this is not the only field what you are going to find it.
Correct.
You are going to find some other values
what
too.
14 actually stands for in the implementation guide.
Correct. Correct.
Okay.
So the complete, that is the master document. Then this is not a very big transaction, as 837 is the biggest transaction, and in 837 also 2300 is the loop, which is the biggest loop. Yeah, so this is it. Moreover, what you have in the 820 transaction set, there is nothing much to discuss about or go over practically on this particular transaction.
Like if you would,
unless you have any questions about any of the prior transactions.
If you have the implementation, somehow get hold of the implementation guide for 820, that will be helpful, because my project has to deal exclusively with 834 and 820 transaction sets. So they were so bent, they didn't even ask me any other transaction sets that if I have worked with or no in my interview.
See, moreover, as long as you understand what is the source,
right,
you are in good shape.